Welcome back to the Warehouse Podcast. My name is Jesse. The Orioles have moved to one game above 500 as they beat the San Francisco Giants, took two out of three from the series, and now are 8-7. With that has come despite moving ahead above 500. Once again, the Orioles at one point were 3-6, 3 games below 500 after having been swept by the Pittsburgh Pirates. The Orioles have now started to settle things a little bit, beating up on the White Sox and, taking two out of three from the San Francisco Giants here. Both relatively weak teams, but important wins even at this early juncture for the Orioles season. We at the Warehouse Podcast have not put an episode out in a little while, so I am right here, right now, trying to rectify that. I'm not going to really talk too much about the team generally in this episode. I am going to talk about some significant news that has come out for the Orioles. And unsurprisingly, it is related to injuries. So the Orioles, I will share my screen here so people watching on YouTube can see exactly what I am talking about. Adley Rutschman has been placed on the 10-day IL. The Orioles have recalled Maverick Handley. Um, and yeah, this is going to be a not fun experience for the Orioles to go through. This is really kind of unfortunate. It's particularly unfortunate because Adley Rutschman has been one of the best hitters on this Orioles team so far this year. Maybe, Gunnar Henderson is a bit ahead of him right now offensively because of the home runs the Gunner has been hitting. But Adley has been hitting really, really well, and this is going to be a big blow for this team at this point in the season. So of course, this is an ankle injury, ankle inflammation, left ankle inflammation, they're calling it. And hopefully this is not going to be an injury that is going to be months long. Hopefully this will be a quicker injury and relatively quicker, I guess, relative to what it could be. Adley going on the IL at this point in the season is not really good. And you know, especially given the offensive performance, I think that a lot of fans were really excited by his offensive numbers at this point. Um, this is just kind of a setback for him, as it is for the Orioles more broadly. Basically, what the Orioles are doing here, Maverick Hanley is being called up, and then McDermott is being DFA'd, also in response, which is also kind of a significant move. The Orioles for a period of time, and we had sort of talked about McDermott at one point potentially having made spot starts for the Orioles and been on the major league team at some point in 2026 or in future years. His future with the Orioles is uncertain at this point in time. So we'll see what happens with him, but I mean, really, the biggest news is really about Adley, of course. So I'm gonna kind of focus on him, what that means for the Orioles, for the team, going forward. Um, so the biggest implication, and I'm not gonna talk as much, but Tyler O'Neill is also on the injured list as well. He got put there as of today on the concussion related IL. So he's going to be out for a little while as well. Now, I think, yeah, with the concussion IL, it's, at a minimum 7 games. There's a little bit. And then I think also, it might be retroactive to yesterday or something like that for O'Neill. But in any case, these are sort of significant because they do have impacts on each other. And the biggest impact, of course, right now, so Adley being on the IL, what that means in the short term is that for the most part, Basayo is going to assume everyday catching responsibilities behind the plate. I would imagine. Now, I think that's not an ideal situation for the Orioles because I think that they really ideally would want him to be more or less splitting time between DH and catcher. Um, but with this, there's also so he's going to be sort of relegated, I think, behind the plate for the most part. Other than maybe on a Sunday day game after a night game type situation, or maybe another time during the week, Maverick Hanley might get the start behind the plate with Basayo DHing. But the most significant impact is that Basayo is going to be behind the plate. And then this DH spot is much more up in question. Um, who's going to DH for the Orioles? Well, as I kind of said, it's not going to be Tyler O'Neill because he's going to be on the IL, a different sort of IL, but an IL. There is going to be, um, you know, uh, also in addition to O'Neill not being the DH, Ryan Mountcastle, as it mentions here in this article, he's a little more unclear. Um, he was going under an MRI today. But Mountcastle is a little unclear whether he's going to be um, sort of able to play in the foreseeable future. Now, he might be a day to day type of injury. He might be on the IL as well. We'll find out soon. But in either scenario, definitely it's not going to be O'Neill that's going to be the DH, and it's going to be, and it might not be Ryan Mountcastle as well. So, given that set of circumstances for the Orioles, that's going to make a big difference because now we're kind of looking, you know, deeper down onto the depth chart, and this lineup is not going to look nearly as good if you have Adley and Basayo both in the lineup. That is going to be a much better lineup than Basayo catching, and then maybe. Uh, and then either O'Neill DHing. Um, you know, O'Neill, of course, can play in an outfield position, but then if he's not playing in an outfield position, or if he is, then of course you're going to find somebody else to DH. And if he's not, then he's not occupying the DH slot. We're going to have maybe Beavers out and left, or whoever it ends up being in whatever sort of defensive alignment. Of course, with the outfield, there are a lot of variables. If it's a day Tavares is playing, Kowser can be in left, or right even. So there are a lot of different, and O'Neill can be in right. So there are a lot of different, and Ward, they're in left. So there are a lot of different, defensive alignments, and all these different things can impact each other. But the bottom line is that this is going to be a worse offense, significantly so, for the next 10 days, given that Adley is not going to be in the lineup. So just to kind of start the season, as you can see here, Adley has already eclipsed more than half a WAR at this brief time in the season. He was hitting 294, 385 OBP, 471 slugging, with a 855 OPS and 152% OPS plus. And especially for a catcher, those are tremendous numbers, being 52% above league average offensively. Is really, really significant. And then when you're getting that value behind the plate, and you can also have Basayo in the lineup as well, even though, Basayo has not been hitting great. That alone is going to be a big distinction, and a very different looking offense. Adley was hitting, toward the top of the order for the Orioles, and it's going to be a big loss in the next 10 days or so, that he is not with the team. Um, Looking at sort of the immediate defensive replacement, Basayo. Now, of course, he's just kind of getting his season started as everybody is. Him and Basayo have, roughly the same number of at bats, but the offensive production is very, very different. Basayo hitting 135, a 238 on base percentage, 216 slugging, and 454 on OPS, which all leads to a 35 OPS plus, which means he is 65% worse than the league average hitter. He is at a -2 WAR. So, this is not to, really make significant commentary on Basayo and what he's going to do the rest of the way and what he's going to do this year. I think, we sort of spoke before the season about our expectations for him offensively for this season. And, I relatively stand by that. I'm not concerned that he's not off to a great start. He is very young, very new. Um, does that mean that, in the short term for the next 10 days, there is going to be a massive drop off in offensive production behind the plate? That's absolutely what it means. And Basayo, being behind the plate now, granted, I think, these numbers here for today. I guess, like, more or less it is fair to say that Basayo did have a home run in the game today against the Giants. So these numbers would be slightly better, you're seeing here. But in general, there's still going to be a significant drop off in offensive production from Adley behind the plate to Basayo behind the plate, at least in the short term. Maybe at the end of the season, maybe their numbers might be somewhat similar. I think Eli might make that case. Um, or might have made, we didn't have that exact conversation during our preseason episode, but Eli might make that case that, their numbers are going to look, maybe relatively similar by the end of the year. But in the short term, I think it's more or less fair to assume that Adley, it was going to probably be the better hitter. And now we're going to have Basayo, and that is going to have a ripple effect throughout the rest of the order. The Orioles are going to have much more limited options to try to, like, figure out these holes and figure out these gaps in the lineup. And yeah, so that's really kind of what it comes down to. It is fair to say, I mean, the Orioles are showing that they have a lot of confidence in the bat of Basayo. Today he was the cleanup hitter for the Orioles, hitting number 4. He's been doing that even despite, yeah, as we can see right here, hitting fourth in the order. And he's been doing that on a pretty regular, pretty regular basis. There has been some shuffling, but, he's definitely every day in the top half and a lot of times hitting 4. So the Orioles are showing that they do believe in Basayo. But I think if we're, looking at, sort of the best options for right now, I think I think we know, or can fairly comfortably assume that Adley is going to be hitting better in the short term. So that was kind of yeah, so that's kind of the situation. So, what are the implications of this? Hopefully, over the course of the long season, is not going to sink the Orioles. Potentially, this is, I think it, they're not great vibes right now. I think if you're an Oriole fan, right? We all know about the injury history that the Orioles had last year. And it was very, very significant. Probably had a big impact in general on our season. And we talked about we have guys out right now, Jordan Westberg, and Jackson Holiday, most notably. And now another really critical player has gone on the injured list for the Orioles. Um, if Adley is injured these 10 days and he's back healthy and playing well the rest of the year, okay, I think, all Oriole fans will consider that a success, right? The question is that really the likeliest scenario? This is, sort of a new injury for him. It's just ankle inflammation, so, theoretically there should not be anything. Um, that he can't recover from. But, just based on the vibes of this team, um, the Orioles are a game above 500. So maybe there is a slight difference in feeling from last year when, yeah, the Orioles really, really struggled to start the season. Um, but in general, despite the record, yeah, I don't think that the vibes are feeling great right now with this team, with not only Adley but the other slew of injuries that I just mentioned. So that's a concern. If Adley, like I said, if Adley is healthy after this injury and it was, a blip on the radar, not a big deal at all. But if, this is the beginning of, I mean, 10 games is not a completely insignificant amount, right? 10 games, you could have a 1 or 2 game record difference throughout the course of that 10 games that could be significant when we get to the end of the year, right? So that is absolutely possible. The difference between the Orioles going 7-3 or 6-4 or 5-5 over 10 games might not feel significant right now, but definitely could be when we get to the end of the year. And this Adley injury, even if we lose 1 game more than we would have if he had not been there, especially with us predicting the Orioles are going to be kind of on the cusp of a second wild card spot, that could make a big difference. Yeah, I mean, if we were the Dodgers, then 5-5 or 6-4 wouldn't be a big difference. But for this Orioles team, it really does feel important that they get every win that they can. So this 10 games, in the long run, could be important and could be impactful. It also could not be if the Orioles win 93 games this year or win 80 games this year. This injury will, in the grand scheme of things, not make any difference um, in terms of our playoff odds. But um, it very well could make a difference, and it's a concern. And then it is a concern, is this, um, you know, just kind of like bad luck, and which that's kind of what it seems to be. Adley was not like pulled out of the game. It's unclear how the injury developed. Yeah, but regardless, the point is that, um, you know, is Adley going to make various stints on the IL, or is this just kind of a one and done, um, kind of thing? And then, once he gets back from injury, is he going to pick up offensively right where he left off, and performance wise right where he left off? Or are we going to sort of notice a distinction and, kind of the good offensive numbers that he's really demonstrated at the beginning of the year? Have those have we seen the end of that kind of production from him? So we're gonna find out. It definitely. I think that there was a lot of pressure on Basayo coming into the year, and I think there's even more on him right now. The Orioles are just like I said, they're putting him square in the fourth spot in the order. That's a really big deal. And now he's going to be probably behind the plate for every day, more or less. Maybe they'll, like I said, day game after a night game, and maybe one other game in a week. They want to get them, want to have them not catch. But the Orioles are not, especially for this team that is trying to make a playoff push. When they had Adley behind the plate, it's very easy to find a way to not overextend Basayo and to not give him too many innings, or they can monitor closely his workload behind the plate, etc. But when you have Maverick Hanley, and the question is, are we putting Hanley or Basayo behind the plate? Well, those are two very, very there's a big distinction in production, offensively and defensively, between those two players. And we're trying to win games, right? So, how much are the Orioles going to be able to try to find this balance between making letting him stay healthy and letting him DH and not overworking him behind the plate, and just putting him back there because he's the best option we have right now, and we need to win games. So um, the Orioles will try to navigate that fine line while this during this time that Adley is out. And hopefully he will, yeah, it'll just be the minimum 10 days. He'll recover quickly, and then we can kind of resume our normal operations. Basayo can sort of resume his role on the team, fluctuating between catching and DH. But until then, the Orioles might be suffering a little bit without Adley behind the plate. And what implications will that have for a team that is not firing on all cylinders offensively? Yeah, we are not hitting the ball as well as we could. The offense has not is not right now where it needs to be. The offense is sort of where the Orioles are hoping to have their most success. And this offense really needs to be good. It's already an offense that is not doing that well. If you look right here, even you can see kind of the OPS. Henderson and Ward, of course, are doing very well. Other than them and Leody Taveras, who is also hitting very well, but is not playing every day, though he might be on his way to doing that. Um, Nobody else has an OPS over 700. So, um, you know, it's not significant at all here. Rodriguez, as you see here, this was his only plate appearance where he drew a walk, and that's why he is a 1,000 OPS. So I'm putting him aside for this, but in general, yeah, this is not an offense that's doing well, and we're going to take a big hit over these next few games without Adley, who was hitting the ball really, really well. So, um, it is a setback for this team. It's a setback for this team that's trying to find its way offensively, that is trying to live up to expectations offensively. And that's his actually Adley's offensive contributions are, I think, really what is the most significant. Despite his defensive abilities, the offensive production is really what's going to be the most missed, I think. And because not only of what he was doing offensively, but then replacing him with Basayo, and then replacing, what is generally Basayo in the lineup with, the ripple cascading effect of whoever is, now in the lineup that is lower down on the depth chart who wouldn't normally be in the lineup because Basayo is now catching. So not great news from an Oriole fan perspective. I guess one of the comforting things about this is that nobody in the league really looks great right now. Everybody looks kind of mediocre, including all the other teams in our division. So maybe that's one slight encouragement. The Orioles are right there towards the top of the division at 500. Um, can I actually look at that right now. Where are we in the standings? So we're third. Okay, we're tied for first at 8-7. Maybe they're not quite updated. I know our record is updated. I don't know about the Rays and Yankees, but in any case, so nobody is jumping out. Nobody has 13 wins at this point. So we're right there record wise, but obviously there are going to be some things that need to change with this team for us um, to reach our potential, and Adley is a setback here. So in any case, yeah, thank you all so much for listening. Yeah, appreciate you all. Hopefully, we will see Adley back on the field in the near future. Please follow the show, give us a 5-star rating and review. We have a YouTube channel. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Comment with any thoughts that you might have on the ideas, the content, the analysis. If you want to get in touch with us, you can email us, thewarehousepod@gmail.com. You can follow us on Instagram and Blue Sky at The Warehouse Pod. Thank you, everybody, so much for listening. This has been The Warehouse Podcast. My name is Jesse, and go O's.